Welcome back to the Voices of Business, a Santa Clarita Valley Chamber of Commerce podcast. Good to be with you. I'm your host, Joshua Maddux. My co-host today, today we're flipping the tables a little bit on someone who's made a career of asking the tough questions and hosting shows like this. But more about our guest in a minute. The Voices of Business is where we talk with business owners and leaders about business here in the Santa Clarita Valley. Sometimes we don't just stick to business. We talk about leadership, management, and really wherever the spirit takes us. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Tell a friend, give us a good rating and review. That really helps get the word out about this show and helps further conversations that we're having, like the one we're having today with Corey Nathan, who is founder and CEO of Scan Media.
What's happening, Joshua? Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
This is crazy. So I'm like, I'm going through the script in my head of like, starting the show. But now, yeah, like you said, where the tables have turned, haven't they?
In the green room pre-show, Corey's like, I'm looking for the guest notes. And I'm like, nope, you're the guest.
Damn. Yeah, really putting me on the spot. Okay. All right. I'm ready.
I know. Well, so two things. One, I don't know if you realize this. We dropped the first episode about a year ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been about a year.
Which is wild that, we're about 20 episodes. I think this will be like episode 19.
Okay.
And yeah, it's been a wild journey, but good stuff.
Yeah.
So,
I've been enjoying it.
Let's get to know you a little bit more. Let's talk about your background and what brought you to Santa Clarita. Where'd you grow up? What does that look like?
Sure. So my family's all from Brooklyn, the old country. I mean, how much do you want me to include here?
Yeah, that's true. You host podcasts. We'll be here for 4 hours.
Yeah. No, so I grew up more on the Jersey side. If anybody remembers that song, My Hometown, that's my hometown. Bruce Springsteen country. We had some of the same high school. Even he's like 20 something years older than me, but some of the teachers were still teaching at my high school. And then I started out professionally. I was a stockbroker during the day, going to a theater conservatory at night. And I hated my life during the day, but I loved my life at night. So when I graduated from that conservatory, I quit my job as a broker and I started producing theater in New York. And not too long after, we did some cool stuff in Chelsea, like off-Broadway size houses and some other bigger houses. And then a mentor of mine said, he really encouraged me to move out to LA. So I was already with Lisa, my wife at the time, and she's still my wife. At the time, I was with Lisa, who's my wife still. Should be clear about that. This is my first wife, Lisa. Oh, is she your second wife too? No. Anyway, so we were together, and but we had only been together for about a year. And I told her, yeah. So George, this mentor of mine, told me to move out to LA, and I really understand if you didn't want to come with me, but I'm leaving. So literally like 3 weeks later, we had a pickup truck packed mostly with her shoes and her dog. And we were driving out to LA. We've been here since 1995. And my first job, I started from scratch. I wasn't going to be a broker. I wasn't going to get back into that business. So I literally started as a driver, a messenger, and worked my way up. But that was a great way to learn the city. And one of the chance deliveries that I had, it was a Friday afternoon, and I had a package to deliver what looked like Oregon to me. It was beyond like the AAA. I wasn't a Thomas Guides guy. I was a AAA maps guy because I like the big picture. And I had to go stop by AAA and pull out a whole new map for this place called Santa Clarita. I even had Simi Valley, but it was a Friday afternoon. So I called, she was still my girlfriend. I called Lisa. I said, Lee, I don't know when I'll be back. Do you want to come with me? I mean, we'll make a whole, day of it. And it turns out that we got up to Stevenson Ranch in like 35, 40 minutes. So traffic was a little bit different back then.
Yeah, I was going to say, from where?
From West LA, seriously. So
wow.
The traffic patterns were definitely different back then.
You can still do that. It's just 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. So we got up here, and so Lisa's from Alabama. She's used to open space, and we were living in this like 1 bedroom, if you could even call it that, in Santa Monica, and it was still, the sun was shining. It was a cul-de-sac, and kids were playing whatever, kickball or soccer on the street. And, it was just, I mean, you've seen the shows, you've seen Santa Clarita Diet, you've seen like little, the shows that depict Stevenson's Ranch. And I saw a look in my lovely girlfriend, soon to be fiance, soon to be wife's eyes, that was kind of like a shark tasting blood. And, it's like, I'm doomed. And, it meaning that she just sensed something up here that she really wanted to be a part of. So over the subsequent, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, we moved closer and closer to Santa Clarita. And by 99, I think it was, we lived up here. And then during those same years, I went from messenger to limo driver to starting to produce theater and some independent film, and eventually started my first business out here, which kind of grew out of my producing activity, which is a specialty headhunting and mergers and acquisitions company, specializes in entertainment advertising. And the connection there is, when I was producing film in particular, I was typically the producer on the team that was like finding people and putting teams together. And that's ultimately what I did. And it just, one thing led to another, and I ended up finding this niche within the entertainment industry of creative advertising. So the people who make coming attractions and movie posters, and now the digital campaigns. And I still do that business and have some wonderful, 25-year relationships, which I can't believe I'm saying out loud. Shall I go on? I could keep going, man.
That's the path that really brought you to Santa Clarita. Obviously, like some of the other conversations that we've had with guests on the show, like very winding road of what got you here. So you're in Santa Clarita, you have a few different job, fields that you're pursuing. What led you to really taking the dive and looking at starting your own? I mean, you touched on a little bit of like, you've a headhunting company. What was those other entrepreneurial aspects that you were looking at and ventures that you were exploring?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So it is a long and winding road. Once we moved up here, we were married in 97 and had our first baby in 2001, second baby in 2003, third baby in 2005. And then Lisa finally figured out what was causing it and put a stop to that nonsense. But my order of priorities changed, and instead of feeling like I had the luxury of pursuing passion projects, the job and the bottom line really became a central focus. But despite that, life still happens, and economies still happen, and the world still happens. So we really felt we were starting to build a life for us and our family, and then 2008 happened. So my business was doing really well through 2007, but we started sliding. We were a lead, and still are a leading indicator of the economy. So we started sliding in early 2008, and we saw as much as a 70 to 75% correction in our revenues. And I didn't know if we were going to zero, frankly. But by then, we had a house, and our kids were at Trinity Classical Academy, and all this, and I payroll that I was responsible for. So one of the results of that was me saying to myself, I need to figure out how to create more revenue, whether it's this business or another one. And we started C-Spot Go, the window cleaning pressure washing company, because it was a business that didn't require millions of dollars to get into. But we knew how to do it because my brother and I did it in Jersey when we were kids. We knew how to, we knew what was required for that business. And we felt like there's a lot of glass in Santa Clarita. We felt like we could do it really well. So one of the best things that we did was join the chamber immediately when we started the business. And then directly as a result of the chamber, we met somebody who's part of the Santa Clarita Valley Business Group, which we've been a part of ever since. It's been a great run with both the chamber and the SCVBG. And it definitely enhanced our business right out of the gate. We literally, by the end of the first year, had hundreds of clients as a direct result of our affiliation with Chamber and SCVBG. And I'm not exaggerating, literally hundreds. So that was refreshing. It's still starting a business, so it wasn't like we were rolling in dough. We were still learning lessons along the way and, figuring out how to run a profit, not just revenue. And that was helpful. And then, fast forward to when our kids are getting older, sometime around 2018, 2019, I appreciated having run these businesses. I appreciated the fact that we were able to pay the mortgage and, with some bumps in the road. And I'm grateful for the lessons that we learned along the way too. But I realized that there was something really missing, and that is what I was pursuing as a kid, as a young man in the New York theater scene. The desire to tell stories and connect with a community and breathe life into great literature, or just have conversations. There's an expression that another mentor of mine used. He said, engaging today's culture in conversations that count. And that really resonated with me. Engaging today's culture in conversations that count. So right about that time, I read this book called The Second Mountain by David Brooks. And he talks about this stage in a lot of people's lives where, whether it's a financial correction or a divorce or a death in the family or a serious illness, you kind of fall off of this first mountain that you climb, and you still have a lot of those talents and that drive that got you to the first mountain. And you can still climb another mountain, but you climb it with the perspective of all that experience of having gone through 2008 in our case, and all the stress and lessons that we learned from that. And right about that same time, I listened to my first podcast. I'm not cool like you. I don't have an iPhone. I'm a Samsung guy. So it took me a little bit longer to figure out how to listen to. I've heard of these things, but I never listened to one. And literally I think it was a Mark Maron podcast. A great interview, great conversation. And I felt like as a listener, I was sitting at the table with Mark Maron and his guest for an hour and a half or 2 hours, however long the interview was. And I fell in love with the medium, and my producer my producer brain kicked in. And I immediately started imagining what kinds of cool conversations we could have in this medium called podcasting. So within about 6 months, I was already in development pretty early on, but within about 6 months, we were releasing our first episodes of my first podcast, which is still running, called Geeks and Teaser Gods, which, not so surprisingly, is about the entertainment advertising industry. And then about a year later is when we started talking politics and religion without killing each other, which is our big podcast now.
Yeah. So Trailer Geeks was your first podcast?
Yeah, that was the first one.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, you were making fun of me with my iPhone. I had an Android for a while.
Okay.
Motorola Razr before that. I had a Windows phone at one point, but that lasted, I think 2 weeks. After it kept basically factory resetting itself every 24 hours, I said, forget that. Android, I had podcasts back in the day, but it was, little clunkier to get to. But I know I started looking into podcasts, probably around the same time, maybe a little earlier. I don't recall exactly when, but I remember even on my iPod, you would download on iTunes and then sync it to the device to get the latest week's episode or whatever.
Right.
And it was always a mystery of how, I understand production from music and songs and, distribution of all that. But then it was but any random person could just grab a microphone, record 20 minutes of saying whatever the heck they want to say, put it out there, and find 20 people, 20,000 people who also have the same thought process and want to listen to somebody else talk about it.
So I am that random person.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny to me how there's so many different directions now that podcasts are. There's one literally this past week that I was showing my son, like, that's a dad and like a 3-year-old that have a podcast. And it's these like 90-second little clips of just the two of them talking podcasts,
Yeah.
element. And it is funny just to see how transformative the medium has become, and where it has come to today. That's crazy. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Even in the time that I've been active, 6 years, I guess, 5, 6 years, it's come a long way. I mean, you're
Yeah.
someone who's introduced me to a number of AI tools that has really ramped up and made more efficientized. What's the word for it? Made a lot of my work a heck of a lot more efficient. There's, man, just off the top of my head, at least 3 or 4 different ways that I'm using AI tools in our production. So it's really evolved where you interact with it. This last year, for example, our big show, we started producing the video in addition to the audio on YouTube and in other places. We're
Nice.
also posting on Substack. So video has become a big component of it, but we're still producing very much the same way that we had been. It's just that we understand that our listeners have evolved. So our audience has evolved. So some of our listeners want to listen to us on the audio platform. Some want to watch us on YouTube. Some go back and forth. They might have us on the big TV through YouTube, and then but still want to listen to the show where they're in their car walking their dog. So
Well, yeah. So I'll say something to that, because there's something that I do when I drive, that I've said it a few times to people, and they're like, "You do what when you drive?"
you watch TV?
I play YouTube videos.
I
Now,
take a nap when I'm driving. I don't know about you. But
well, not everybody drives a Tesla. No, so I am not actively watching the video. No, what I do is there's a few different channels that I follow that they are long form content that is 45 minutes to an hour, that in reality, the visual element is a guy sitting at a desk. One of the ones, Legal Eagle.
Oh, yeah.
So his stuff is really, you can turn off the screen and you can gather 98% of the content just by the audio. It's just him
Right.
talking about it. And so in reality, what I do is I hit play on that. My phone goes into the center console, and then I drive and I just listen to that media, and I'm consuming, like I said, 98% of the content. Do I need to see the screen? Absolutely not. And it's a 40-minute episode, and I'm driving 20 minutes across town, so I'll catch the first half then.
Yeah.
When I drive home, catch the other half. And so I think it's interesting to see how, some people are consuming it via video or just via audio or a hybrid method or, whatever that looks like. And I think it's, evolved and continues to evolve, as we go. And I know so you've got the 2 different shows primarily, obviously, this one as well. And I know you're part of some other ones, from the planning stages or production or that type of stuff. And, Scan Media as a whole is a production company. With the Talkin' Politics and Religion, like, I imagine there has been some emotionally charged, polarizing conversations. And the title of the show is just great because it's talking politics and religion without killing each other. Which I think is like, that's the key, because we're in a time right now, and I'm trying to say this, like, that it doesn't matter what political or non-political topic you bring up. Find a room full of 5 people, and there'll be at least 2 in that room that have polarizing opinions. And feel strongly about it. And that's fine. But how do we do that and then still live in the same city on the same planet? And so I imagine that, there's been some relatively emotionally charged topics. How do you prepare for some of that? And like, what do you do from a disarming perspective to like, have you had guests that are just like, you're an idiot and just go off on like, what does that look like?
So we're about 300 episodes into that one, and I can count on one hand, maybe, I don't know, there might only be one episode that went entirely off the rails. And even conversations that I had subsequent to having a guest on there, where a guest would come on and I would have subsequent conversations with them off the air, I could still count on one hand how many times it really went off the rails. And that reality speaks to a larger reality, which a lot of folks have a misperception about. And that is, when you look at the general population, there are only 6 to 8% of what can be defined as extremists. So self-identifying right wing or left wing or however you want to call it, but people who self-identify as completely in the tank for the most, partisan version of the two major parties or the two major, political lenses. But the perception is that it's a much more significant percentage of people that are very extreme in their views.
Yeah.
When it comes to actually having these conversations, More in Common is a great organization that's done some really broad studies of this, like it literally in the tens of thousands of people. One came out in 2019 called Hidden Tribes, and that's that was the study where we learned about it's about 6% on the right wing side and 8% on the left wing side that are really in the extremes, but a plurality, about 2/3 of the population, are what's considered the exhausted majority, that they want to have conversations or be engaged citizens, but they're just exhausted from all the screaming. And there's built-in reasons for that, the algorithms, and, there are business models that know that if they instigate the anger and fear of an audience, it's literally like giving them crack cocaine. And I say literally, meaning literally, like there's a chemical reaction in our brain.
Yep.
When we see something that makes us angry or see something or hear something that makes us afraid, our brain has the same reaction as getting a hit of crack cocaine. And what do we do when we get that crack is we want to go back for more. So some folks keep on going back to whoever it is. I'm not even going to get into some of the pundits that do that, but that's their business model. They know exactly what they're doing. So the truth is that the same organization, More in Common, has done another extensive study. I just read the latest study, actually, and she's going to be, the executive director is going to be a guest on our show here. But gosh, like in the 70 to 80% range of people really want to be able to have these conversations. However, a majority of that 70%, so like 35 to 40% people, maybe more, believe that folks that have different points of view don't want to have it. So we're stuck in our bubbles, even though we want to reach across, whether it's religious or socioeconomic or racial or political lines. There's 70 to 80% of us want to cross those lines, but our perception is the people on the quote unquote other side don't want to engage with us. So
I want to talk to you, but you won't give me the light of day.
Right. And that's a misperception.
Wow.
So what the challenge is to, do it informally. Like we all joke about Doc's here, one of the bars here in town. I love Doc's because it's the most run down, diviest of dive bars in town. But I love Doc's because it's quintessentially Santa Clarita, and I get to have conversations. It's hours. It's all hours, right? It's not all hours, but like all of hours, I should say. So I run into somebody who's wearing his, clean up on aisle 46 hat, meaning, Biden or whatever. And then there's the other guy who's probably a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, but they're all hanging out at the same place. And I love it. And sometimes we explicitly get into those conversations, but a lot of times we don't get to those conversations until I've played darts with them, until we've hung out and talked Dodgers versus Mets with them, until we've done all these other things and have all these other connecting points, so that once we get to the election or politics or some of these charged things, we're already buddies. We're already hanging out. He knows that I like, bullet bourbon, and he likes, Michelob, whatever, like the Yellowbacks or whatever. So stuff like that. We're getting into the practice, and it's the muscles of democracy that we're exercising there. So some of it is informal like that. Some of it is what the city of Santa Clarita is doing by having, music festivals, closing downtown Newhall, or having food festivals or Castaic days, or any number of things that bring the entire community together. Just even food kitchens that that we have here in town. The various fundraisers that we have here in town. That's how I became friends with both the other day, Home and Garden Show. I saw Suzette Valladares, who I'm dear friends with, our Republican state senator. I also saw George Whitesides, the Democratic U.S. Congress member, gave them both a hug. And they're, it's great. That's how it should be. Those are the muscles of democracy at work.
Yeah. And that's, it's interesting to think through the aspect of really those common misconceptions of, I'm assuming you don't want to talk to me, or I'm assuming that your viewpoint is going to be whatever. And really, once you take a minute, play around at darts, watch a game, like just take a step back and really actually have a conversation, that's when you really start to have that really good dialogue. So what would your advice be to like a local entrepreneur, a business owner, someone who's like trying to navigate tough conversations, public, workplace, like any of those elements? How does that translate, maybe to a business owner?
In terms of talking politics and religion, or or how to build a business?
I mean, business owner talking politics and religion in the workplace might open up an interesting can of worms. No, I mean, I think just overall, like just trying to navigate, maybe it's tough conversations. Maybe it's not politics and religion. Maybe it's just, tougher conversations in general, or, things that people aren't maybe seeing eye to eye on. How does some of that, disarming tension type elements translate?
So here's where I think a lot of business owners and business leaders really they couldn't avoid political or social conversations starting, especially in 2020, where folks were bringing their politics and their social concerns into work because it was pervasive. It was our entire lives, right? So you have to discuss initiatives. I learned the term historically marginalized groups, right? And I'm a pretty well-read guy, but I didn't start reading Ibram X. Kendi until 2020, when a bunch of my friends were walking with trauma, sort of social, cultural trauma, and I wanted to be good friends to them, even if I didn't understand it, even if I didn't relate to it directly. I wanted to be a good enough friend to understand what they were going through. And as bosses, as leaders, we want to understand what our people are going through. Now, at the end of the day, we still have to make business decisions. So I'll give you one that some folks might bristle at. The C-Spot Go is a company that goes into people's companies and people's places of business and people's homes. And a majority of our customers wanted super, super clean for various reasons, for health reasons or whatever, because we do more than just clean windows. We do pressure washing and, all kinds of stuff. So they were really concerned about being clean, but at the same time, they didn't want to be exposed to my technicians if they had really strong feelings about not wearing a mask. I said, that's cool, but there's going to be a limited number of places that I can send you to, right? Because my job isn't to like take some political stance. It's to serve my clients. And if my clients are, they have health risks, or for whatever reason, they say, no, this is the guidance and we're following the guidance. So if you're coming into my place of business, coming into my home, we need guys wearing masks, following certain health protocols. So we decided as a company that we're going to serve our clients in that way. And some folks objected to it, and that's okay. That's their prerogative. And if because our guys were wearing masks in certain buildings and homes, they decided not to use us because they had a strong political opinion about that, that's their prerogative not to hire us. But we felt
Yeah.
as a company, the best thing that we could do is have our guys wearing masks that year. So how do you deal with it? I think you have to deal with every issue that arises on an individual basis, and really think about what serves your employees, what serves your company, what serves your customers and clients, and what serves your community the best, and think about it according to your own set of priorities, right? That's one. But two is, and this is on a more personal level, when you're having those conversations, is to lead with curiosity over contentiousness. When you're getting into these conversations, somebody that I really admire and respect, he led me to a book called Creative Inc. And it's about the story of Pixar, the business side of the story of Pixar.
Oh, yeah.
And they had an expression, loving, if I remember correctly, loving candor. So being able to have hard conversations and being candid with someone, but with love, right? And the way that I approach that, the way it's kind of a compass that I look at is my compass pointed towards the possibility, if I'm having a difference with somebody, the possibility that I can possibly arrive at a point that where I'll say, oh, I never thought of it that way. Does that possibility exist?
Yeah.
That's the compass that I'm trying to follow.
Yeah. Are you, as a business owner, or whatever, going into that conversation with the element of, I don't have a predetermined outcome of this conversation? Like, you walk into someone's office going, they're going to be mad at me, they're going to yell at me, this is going to be the outcome. Like, yeah, there's a much higher chance that that's going to be the outcome. If then you're going to be more combative because you walk in and you're going to be like, well, I know they're going to yell at me, so I'm just going to start raising my voice already. And that person's like, what is going on?
Right.
And yeah.
Curiosity over contentiousness, I think, really. And the irony there is that disposition allows you to be more persuadable. Now, again, you still have to have your principles clear, and an order of priorities that are clear. That's not to say you cede certain things that are important, like being honest and not stealing and doing things the right way. You don't have to give that stuff up, but you can still be curious. You can lead with a sense of humanity and seeing another human being, as opposed to getting one data point about this person and then going on the attack because that they voted a certain way, or whatever data point you're going off of to create some sort of caricature. That's not helpful. And the beautiful irony in that is it leaves you it leaves room for the possibility that you could be persuaded, but because you're in that disposition, because you have that posture, you're also more persuadable. Like, you can persuade others, right? If you're more persuadable, you're in a better position to persuade others if that's the direction that you want to go. So it's I don't know, it's a completely different approach than, especially how a lot of folks approach their conversations online. But that's a whole different story. I'm just talking about whether it's meeting people at Doc's Inn or at the next city council meeting, or in my boardroom, and talking to people around an important business issue.
So Scan Media, I want to circle back to what you're doing there a little bit, as we sort of start to wrap things up here. Obviously you have the two podcasts that we already talked about. There's this podcast, which is in partnership with the Chamber. You've got a few other things going on. What is your sort of big vision behind Scan Media? What's the direction? What do you see? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
That's a big question. So I go back to
or
that
do you
phrase.
know?
Well, I engage today's culture in conversations that count. That's really what it comes down to. But for me, the second mountain clarified for me certain gifts that I bring to the party, certain talents that I have, but also what's meaningful, right? So it's not just about doing this thing and getting paid doing it, doing something that I enjoy and getting paid doing it. It's about identifying needs in our culture, identifying needs in our community, and meeting those needs in a unique way, that with something that I can uniquely contribute, and my team, the team of people that I've built up around us, can uniquely contribute. So talk politics and religion without killing each other is definitely a manifestation of that. So I want to continue doing that while the medium and the industry evolves. And I'm super curious to see how it evolves and how I can ride that wave, continue growing and having these really terrific conversations. But again, it circles back around to engage today's culture and conversations that count. That's what it is for me.
What are different elements, for you as you've had multiple different businesses, multiple different, avenues and ventures? What is like a tough moment, maybe a failed conversation or business venture or something that really like taught you that biggest lesson or not even necessarily the biggest, but like taught you a lesson or an important moment in life?
One big lesson was probably the first part of the 2000s, the early 2000s. And that is that decisions made with good intentions don't necessarily work out. Like if you make a certain decision that you pretty much know is a bad business decision, having good intentions behind it doesn't fix the math. Like it's the math is still the math. Your P&L is still what it is. So you could have all the good intentions you want, but at the end of the day, if the math doesn't add up, it's not going to work out for anybody. So
Yeah,
that
it
was
ain't
one.
mathing.
Yeah. What that looks like is I hired some people, and they weren't right for the jobs that I hired them for. I wanted to do them a favor, or I thought it could work out because they had good intentions, I had good intentions. And then when it came to like time to reckon with, business gravity, we still fell down
Make
and
payroll.
went boom. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. So I learned that lesson the hard way and probably had to learn it a few times over. As I say, sometimes, well, the expression is no lessons learned in a second kick of the mule, but sometimes it takes a few kicks on, of the mule for me to learn the lesson the first time. So that's one. But two, and the deeper one for me is, I wish that I had stayed true to what I was describing before is what I could uniquely contribute, what I was uniquely passionate about, and marry that with what I know about business much earlier on. The sacrifices that we made and the work, the crap that we went through, when you really believe in what you're doing and love what you're doing and are pretty good at what you're doing, you're still going to face turmoil, but you're facing it with a different sense of purpose. It's not just about surviving. It's not just about closing a deal so that you can pay the mortgage. And that's important. Don't get me wrong. But when there's a greater purpose to it, man, it's the challenges that we're facing today feel a heck of a lot different than the ones that we faced in 2008 and 2009.
Yeah, it's an interesting time in business for sure.
Yeah.
If there was one thing you could go back and tell yourself as you were starting in business, first year of business, like, obviously we have to pick one of the businesses. What would you go back and say?
The first thing that comes to mind is, dude, chill. I think that in a lot of my businesses and other life endeavors, I was consistently in such a rush, especially in my late teens, early 20s, even going into my late 20s and early 30s. I was in such a rush. Whereas I've come to really value the process. I've come to really, like when I started this business, I didn't say, oh, I'm going to do this for 5 years. I just said, this is something I'm going to be doing. And I didn't need to have, a certain size audience by a certain day or month or year. I just said, okay, I'm going to continue to learn something every day. And when I learn what's working, I'm going to make a daily commitment to do it. For example, one of the ways that we grew what's now the Big Show, we found a very effective, what's called earned media. So there's paid media and earned media, right? So earned media in this space is getting the host or the main personalities of the show on other podcasts in that same genre. So in 2021, I started booking myself, since I was the host, on other politics and religion shows. And I just said, you know what? All I'm going to do is I'm going to send out one email along these lines every day, 5 days a week. And let's see where it goes from there. It turned out that I was getting booked on about 1 or 2 shows a week. So I had pretty good results for those 5 emails a week I was sending out.
Yeah, that's really good. 1 in 5.
And I did it for 6 months, and I did no other marketing, and our show grew by just over 130%. So I'm glad that we got the results, but more than anything, it was the process. I was committed to the process. We've done the same thing with paid media and found certain paid media that really doesn't work, and then other paid media that works really, really well. So yeah, I would go back to my younger self and say, dude, chill.
And follow the process. I think that's one of the ones that I want to I want to just sort of, simmer on for a second is there's so many businesses who they'll start doing something, they'll start whatever that thing is. It's a new project management system. It's a new CRM. It's a new marketing campaign, whatever it is, especially when it's technology and it's a new software application. It's like, oh man, it's taking our employees a little bit longer to do this function. I'm like, yeah, once they do it for a week, then they're going to be twice as fast. And now it's going to save you time. But day one, yeah, it's going to take a little bit longer. You got to trust the process. Got to get your reps in. You don't walk into the gym one time and all of a sudden, you have a great body and muscle mass is great and you never need to go back. That doesn't work that way. So yeah, it's trust the process.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, do you have any questions for me?
Oh, I forgot that was an option.
We flipped the script and we already did me as an interview. So
yeah,
that was episode 5 or something.
Okay. So this might take a whole other hour. I have a feeling if I ask this question, what would you tell business owners that are not using AI, at least that they know, that they realize? What would you tell them? I'll make this a specific question. What would you encourage them to do as a good first step to start learning AI in order to find good applications for their business?
Yeah. So I'll answer that question, but first I'll preface something I've been saying for basically as long as I've been doing this. Your website can be the absolute best employee or the absolute worst. If you hired a new salesperson and that salesperson told you, I will work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and you say, that's great. I don't have a training manual. Go sit in the corner. That is the absolute worst investment. What are you doing? But if you give them all the company training material, all that information, and you let them run with it, that is the best employee. And that's the difference for my business, the difference between a good website and a crappy website. So now let's take that into AI. Now you have AI that can, you've interacted with the AI stuff that we just did for the networking group that you and I are in. So my company runs all the social media for the networking group that Corey and I are in. And my marketing director said, here's 10 questions that I need everybody in the group to answer. I put them together in a survey form and we sent it out. And 2 people out of 75 answered it. And we sent it out again. We got nothing. We sent it out again and we got nothing. And so it was 2 out of 75. That's a terrible percentage. So then we set it up as a phone call. You can call in and the AI asks the first question, you answer it. It asks the second question, you answer it. It's conversation based. And it then takes all those answers, puts in a summary, and then passes that off to my marketing director. So we have been having about an 80% completion rate on members that the system asks and sends a text message out to do. So two things. One, we went from I don't know, 7 would be 10%. So we're like 5%. We went from a 5% of the people that we asked to fill it out actually completing it to about an 80%. And it's better answers. If someone just said yes, then it would say, okay, well, what do you mean by that? And so we have more information, better answers, and it's all AI. So the process is one of the members in the groups calls a phone number and it says, hey, I'm going to ask you some questions and walk through, basically information gathering. So think about if you're I don't know, whatever the industry is, there's some onboarding questions that you have. There's 10 questions that are onboarding, and those need to be answered every time. If you have a form or a document that you have people fill out, that could be easily converted into an audio call, or it could be converted into a text conversation, or it could be converted into entirely ran by AI, which means someone can call or do that conversation at 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday, and you don't have to have staff for it. That also means that instead of me calling your business, were you there the Friday that I stood up and basically acted like a voicemail?
Yeah. Yeah.
That group. I had called a handful of local businesses, people that had actually reached out to my business and said, hey, I'm interested in your services. I called their phone number and it just went to a 661 blah, blah, blah is unavailable. And then it said either A, the voicemail box has not been set up. We're talking about a business phone number that's listed on their website.
Right.
Or the second thing was the voicemail's full. And I was like, okay, if I was a paying customer and I was Google searching industry name, I'm hitting the second result. And so AI audio, AI handling phone, that person could then, the AI could pick up, could ask some questions, get some qualification, say if someone's going to call you back, in the next 24 hours, whatever, put together some information, ping a staff member and sort of give a summary and do that call qualification. And I get it. Phones now for businesses are so obnoxious because you get so many people every day calling, trying to solicit you services or whatever. Great. Let AI handle all that. And so getting back to your specific question about what would I say to business owners who aren't utilizing AI? Do something. Don't do nothing. So there are two first steps. The first one is go to YouTube, put in your industry plus AI, plumbing, AI, construction, AI, financial advising, AI. Okay, obviously some of the industries might get a little interesting, but whatever your industry is, there's going to be 85 videos, probably a lot more, on what people are doing in that space in your industry with AI this week. And then the second thing is ChatGPT now, download the app. You can even ask it hey, what are 20 things you can do for my business in this industry? And we're not looking to revolutionize, what you're doing and eliminate, if you're a 20-person company, you're not looking to eliminate 20 people from the business. You're looking to augment their time and improve that productivity and get rid of the stuff that is just taking way too much time. Perfect example, we finished a project. We have 15 hours of Zoom calls that my content strategist is going to go back through to figure out what exactly all the conversations were about to write the final case study on this project. A much better use of time is take all those documents, give them to an AI and say, go through all of this, and based upon our company template of how we write case studies, produce an outline and 80% of the document. And it does in 2 minutes. And then a content person comes in and spends an hour fact checking, cleaning up, doing all that, not 20 hours or more. I mean, we're talking about 15 hours of content they'd have to go through, plus writing, plus everything else. I mean, you're 20 to 30 hours to write that piece of content.
Yeah.
And we just took it from 30 hours of work to 2.
Yeah.
And the problem is, it doesn't matter the industry. Your competition is starting to use this.
Right.
So that means if they can save 5%, 10%, 20% staff time by utilizing AI to improve their business, that means that they are 10%, 20% more profitable than you. How is that going to work when you go to bid a new project and you're head to head with that company? You're going to lose unless you cut wages, cut corners. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I could, like you said, I could talk about this for the next, 3 hours. So if there is a business that wants to talk about it further, I'd love to chat because I totally nerd out about it. So, and I challenge you, I 100% challenge you. If you're sitting there listening going, yeah, AI wouldn't work in my business. Great. I'll buy you coffee or lunch and let's talk. Because, yeah. So awesome. Well, as always, thank you for listening. Please follow, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Corey, how can people find you?
Easiest way to find me is I'm on all the apps, the socials at Corey S. Nathan. That's Corey, S as in Sam, Nathan. And we put all the stuff for the shows and Scan Media all in my, and it's like everything, Substack and Facebook and Twitter and, Blue Sky and Bluegram and Gram X and I don't know. We're on all the socials at Corey S. Nathan.
Awesome. You can find The Voices of Business at The Voices of Business on pretty much most of the main social channels. I'm Joshua Maddux on LinkedIn and a few of the other ones. We'd love to have your business or other business leaders from the Santa Clarita Valley join in on the conversation. If you're a chamber member, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Voices of Business.